Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our national call, our monthly national call. We have a number of topics to cover this morning. One is on our legislative platform for 2018. This is obviously a big election year. We're going to make sure lawmakers and prospective lawmakers know where we stand and what issues are important to us, so you'll hear about that. And you'll also hear from a speaker who will talk about trauma, the trauma she's personally experienced, and how we can make sure we don't pass on that trauma that we experience to our sons. So it should be an interesting day, and we just want to kick it off by doing a quick recap of the last meeting with minutes from Tammy Greer-Brown. Tammy, please unmute yourself.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Let me get started. The call started at 9:30 at 4 a.m. Opening quotes, there were no minutes read. DePelsha talked about the platform and the mission of the organization, and also stated about the MLK Day of Service, which was extended to 1/31/18. Chapter development spoke about the different MLK service events going around the country, including Baton Rouge, Dallas, Brooklyn, Atlanta, and Los Angeles. And policy with Delicia spoke about the legislative platform rollout, which will entail training, oversight, and criminal justice reform and structural intersections with poverty, as well as state legislative campaign in specific states, including New York, Texas, Tennessee, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, California, D.C., Georgia, Louisiana, Maryland, and Michigan. Some of the key issues that we will be concentrating on in these state legislative campaigns include implicit bias training, bail reform, and body cameras, and also going to do membership engagement with Hobby Days in March. Our guest speaker was Kimberly Peeler-Allen, who's the co-founder of Higher Heights, which is an organization that seeks to elevate Black women's voices in politics and policy. It's a national organization that builds on the infrastructure that harnesses Black women's political power as well as their votes, and engages Black women into voter registration, civic duties, research based in New York. They've done some statistical research data on Black women and civic engagement. Black women are one of the largest groups that use social media, have one of the highest turnouts in all elections, including elections national elections. And basically what they're doing is building a grassroots organization and vetting and supporting Black women who are interested in getting into politics, and also training. It's nonpartisan, and some of the women that they have supported in the past includes Letitia James, New York City Public Advocate, Congresswoman Alma Adams from North Carolina, and Mayor Marilyn Strickland from Tacoma, Washington. They do have webinars and trainings that are available to Black women. It was closed by a Q&A, then closing remarks, and the call ended at 11:10. And that's it for the minutes recap from last month.
Thank you, Tammy. Now I will just give a quick recap of our purpose and mission. So as you probably know, if you've been with us for a while, we have two organizations. One is Moms of Black Boys United, which is our 501c3 organization, and it's focused on being a resource for moms of Black sons by providing information and support to help us and our sons navigate all the situations they may find themselves in, and also to promote positive images of Black boys and men. We also have Mob United for Social Change, which is our 501c4, and all of our advocacy efforts to push for policy change and legislative change comes out of that organization. So you hear more from them today, and it really is focused on influence and policy that impacts how Black boys and men are treated by law enforcement and those in authority overall. So that is who we are and what we're about, and we have a 5-point approach to how we do that. If you go to the next page, we want to influence policy, change perception, demonstrate our power, partner strategically, and promote self-care. So all of our initiatives will fall under one or several of those umbrellas because we really want to approach these issues holistically and look at it from every angle. So today you'll hear from two of those angles, which is influence and policy, and then promoting self-care, because we have to make sure we're taking care of ourselves and our families to ensure that we are healthy and strong enough to continue the struggle. So that's it. Next we will go to, I believe, chapter development for an update by Lisa.
Okay, good morning, ladies. One of the recent events that some of the local chapters participated in was the Dr. MLK Jr. Day of Service. One of the first ones that did something this year was Baton Rouge. Our Baton Rouge ladies, I'm not sure if anyone's on from Baton Rouge, but as you can see here in the pictures, they gathered for a second year for a day of service by participating in a community beautification project by planting cypress trees. So you see here we have Frankie along with a bunch of our other mobs out there. Frankie was expecting at the time, so she was there for moral support and as a photographer during this whole process. So they had fun and helped make the community beautiful. Our next area that we had was in Dallas, Texas. Peggy, I don't know if you're on, but I don't know if you want to talk about it. If you do, you can do *6. But not what they did in Dallas, a few of the ladies and their sons, they went ahead to the Arlington mission. And here they helped for a second year, and they were out there helping unloading a truck, reloading the truck, sorting through boxes and sorting through toys so that the mission has a Christmas store, so the toys are put into their Christmas store. So that was their community service project for that day. So you see here all the beautiful moms and sons and everybody out there helping out, doing a great cause. Our next area we have is Adana in Atlanta, Georgia. Her and her family, I don't know if Adana is on, but her and her family helped to prepare sandwiches for the community. One of the quotes that Adana said here is, we all want the world to know and see our boys have hearts to serve, and it's up to us to show the world that what they refuse to see. So you see her boys and family making sandwiches, taking them out there, and her family. So we appreciate that. Next we have our Brooklyn, New York mobs. Here, this is where DePelsha and the Brooklyn moms participated in their second year of MLK Day of Service. And they helped, this year they helped to make floor arrangements for senior citizens, and the children made arts and craft projects. They had a fun-filled day by all, and I don't know if DePelsha wants to add any more to this.
No, I think you're doing a great job. Just keep going.
Okay. So here you see the mobs that participated, and you see Tammy, you see DePelsha, and probably some of the mobs there, and all the kids having fun here for this project. Next, another regional event that took place in the month of January was in Atlanta, was our Power to the Polls. Here, our Mob United was asked to set up a table to help spread the word about our organization. The people that participated in this was Patty Garrett, Carla Cantybird, and Adana Garrett, and Adana's family, as they're holding up the shirt saying, "I am your future." Here they helped this rally, or this Power to the Poll event, was basically a voter mobilization to get people out to vote and to push people to get out to vote, basically. So, Adana, I don't know if you're on.
I'm here, Lisa.
Oh, do you want to talk about this anymore or add anything?
No, that was actually about it. We did get a chance, though, to meet with a lot of our local leaders that are up for various election seats in different counties, so we will definitely be reaching out to them.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, guys. So that is it for chapter development. Tamara, are you on? Here, I believe we're going to be having a Facebook Live reading coming up soon. It's going to be on this book called A Radiant Child. It's the story of the young artist Jean-Michel Basquiat. So definitely stay tuned for that and look out for the notifications for that upcoming event that takes place live on our website. Similar to how we did the event in January, this will also take place. Same platform.
Right, and this is another book that was featured on the list that we co-curated with the Conscious Kid Library back in November around the holiday season. There were a list of positive books featuring Black male characters, and this was one of them. Crown was one of them. So we may do this from time to time if the author or children want to come on to read the books.
I believe our next slide, we're going to be moving on to legislative 2018 legislative platform preview. We'll have Delicia take over from here.
Delicia and Teddy, because we know we're going to hear from him.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hang on one quick second. Just taking off mute. All right. So good morning, everybody. I know we talked about our legislative platform a bit, but what we wanted to do this morning was to start to give a little bit of a preview. We are going to be having a training in a couple of weeks' time. So what I wanted to do was talk a little bit more about what exactly it is, why we have it, show you how the different high-level issues connect to bills and proposals that we're following in different states, and then really make a plug and an ask for people to reach out and get in contact to get involved. In order to be successful as an organization, we need to make our mission real. And in the advocacy and policy space, that's by directly engaging with elected officials and representatives who have agreed to represent all their constituents, and that includes moms and their sons, moms of Black boys and Black boys and men. And so we are rolling out, as previously touched upon, our legislative platform. What does this mean? It means that we will be sharing our official position on a number of issues. So it helps us kind of move towards being more concrete when we're saying we'd like to impact policy, we'd like to eradicate certain things from our lives, from our boys' lives, such as harassment, abuse, excessive use of force. What does that actually mean? It also means this is now a tool that we can roll out to the membership across the organization. So whether you are in California or Texas or Georgia, you can hop on our website, pull down a fact sheet, work with folks on our policy team to tailor that fact sheet to the issues that are going on in your community. So we now have this resource that you can use. It's your elevator pitch for Mob United for Social Change. So when you're going out, you know, this is something that you can keep with you, or if you're working with us on an initiative, it helps you make these issues concrete. So on the next slide, I'll just talk through some of the issues that we've got keyed up. So one of the major categories has to do with training. All of the issues connected to, all the issues connected to the incidents that we see all across the country where our boys and husbands, fathers, sons, brothers are interacting with police and they're using excessive force. Most of these connect to a lack of training. All across the country, police officers have different standards for training that they are required. In some states, there's very little requirement. In fact, you can be, you know, a licensed cosmetician or beautician with more hours of training than an actual police officer who's meant to protect the public. So what kind of training are we asking for? We're asking for training on de-escalation techniques, crisis intervention training, implicit bias and diversity training. Apologize. Specifically, we are asking that there are nationwide minimum standards with respect to de-escalation and crisis intervention training. But we're also asking for implicit bias and diversity training, not just for police officers. This is actually fairly standard, but also in schools. A number of the cases that we hear about, you know, involve children in schools who are subject to bullying, harassment, and other kinds of abuses that are connected to the lack of training opportunities for educators in school. So we're watching bills across all different states, but we are in particular watching what's going on in states where we have critical mass of members and mobs. Right now, in most of the state legislatures, they are active and introducing bills on a weekly basis, and these bills are going through different processes. Some are going through hearings in the Committee of Jurisdiction, and others have just been introduced and are being reviewed. So right now, Tennessee is a state to watch. There are a number of bills connected to implicit bias training for school personnel in particular. So we're going to be watching these proposals. In New Jersey, there's a assembly resolution that we are watching, which basically the entire assembly would recommend that the state adopt training for law enforcement persons, specifically in instances where you have persons with behavioral health crises. Apologize, I've got a sick kid. Next slide, please. The other issues that are on our platform, another area is oversight. This entails things that enable us to really have clear oversight of the police, ensure that the police are accountable. One of the ways in which there's accountability is our ability to see what's happening when they engage with citizens. So body cameras has been an issue that we've been focusing on for a while, specifically like de-escalation and crisis intervention. We're looking for uniform policies to body camera footage. A lot of times when we're alerted about instances of excessive use of force and there's video footage available, even though some of the footage may be available online, a lot of times there's additional footage that would be available, either the cameras that police are wearing themselves or that are on dash cams and things like that. The laws vary across the country when it comes to accessing body camera footage. In most states, this footage is not automatically available, and it's not even automatically available to family members or their legal representatives when there are incidents arising. So it's a real fight to get body camera footage. So we are advocating for more liberal policies to access body camera footage. As you're probably aware, the footage is key to implicating police officers when they are behaving inappropriately. And so we're watching this issue. And in particular, a bill that we're watching is in the New Jersey Assembly, Senate Bill 556, which would regulate body cameras worn by law enforcement officers. So New Jersey, as you're seeing, is a state that there are a number of proposals that we're going to be watching. The next issue is structural intersections with poverty. There are a variety of issues here, but in particular, we're looking at bail reform and teen sentencing. In particular, teen sentencing has to do with just watching. It's kind of like the raise the age proposals we were watching last year, but specifically a lot of teens of color, black teens in particular, are often subject to adult sentences. a lot of times the sentences are higher than what they would be charged for their white peers. So we're looking at proposals that address sentencing, specifically with respect to bail reform and teen sentencing. In Maryland, there are a few bills that we're watching. One has to do with pretrial release fees. Specifically, what this bill would do, which is currently in the Senate, is that it would allow pretrial release of anyone accused of crime without the fees for certain kinds of crime, nonviolent crimes specifically. That's a proposal that we are supporting because a number of times people of color are disproportionately in prison. They're held in jail simply because they can't afford to pay the fees. And so this would be a reform proposal that we support. Juvenile records, not only are people of color disproportionately in prison, but then when they are released from prison, their records follow them, specifically juvenile records. So the next bill, House Bill 555, would basically make it so that certain records are sealed in instances where you have a juvenile that's been charged as an adult. This doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, it basically means that they have the ability, once they are released, to have certain records while they're juveniles be sealed. Apologize. The last bill that we are supporting is back in New Jersey, and it is Assembly Bill 1089. Specifically, this has to do with, it connects back to bail reform, and essentially it means that where someone is subject to a certain kind of charge, where someone is subject to a certain kind of charge, they would be able to be released in simple terms. So again, it means that they would be subject to the ability to be released and not have to pay bail, and they can go back to trial when appropriate. I think that's all we have for the platform. The last thing that I just wanted to highlight is, again, to encourage folks to reach out. There are bills going forward in all states. And so if you are interested in engaging with your legislature, with your legislative representative, please reach out to policy@mobunited.org. We will train you. We're going to be doing a training at the end of this month, but we will also do specific training for folks who are interested in going to meet with their representative. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Delicia. I hope Teddy feels better soon. Poor baby, having to endure all of this. Thank you for that overview. And everyone, please stay tuned for more information on our legislative platform and actions to come, because we really want as many of you as possible to be engaged in raising our voices and making sure that policymakers know what we expect of them, and making sure that we support candidates who will support our agenda and make sure that people who don't get in office. It's a critical election year, obviously. So up next, we're going to shift gears significantly to our special guest speaker. I'm very excited to hear from her. She has quite a story. Her name is Tonier Cain. Welcome, Ms. Cain. Just say hi, and then I will tell people a little more about you. And if you're on the call, you have to press *6 to unmute yourself.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me on.
Good morning. Thank you. So I'll read your bio, and then we'll just go into it. As I said, she has quite a story: 83 arrests, 66 convictions, and thousands of requests to serve as the keynote speaker in front of audiences that include the United Nations, government agencies, teachers, community and civic organizations, mental health agencies, substance abuse programs, corrections facilities, and trauma survivors. She was featured in the documentary Behind Closed Doors, trauma survivors and the psychiatric system, and she's the subject of the award-winning film Healing Mean. After surviving a childhood of unspeakable sexual abuse, unrelenting violence, and betrayal by systems that were charged with helping, Ms. Tonier Cain stands before her audience of today a testimony to the resiliency of the human spirit, exemplifying the innate human instinct to survive. Tonier Cain lived on the streets for 20 nightmarish years, years filled with hunger, brutality, and a lifestyle when described seems unconscionable. Incarcerated and pregnant in 2004, someone finally took the time to ask, "What happened to you?" instead of "What's wrong with you?" It is at that moment she began her journey to become a survivor and for the first time in her life began to live with more hope than fear. The impact of trauma is realized by every age group, race, ethnicity, socioeconomic group, gender, community, and workforce, and Ms. Cain shares her story. As she shares her story, audience members find themselves challenging their professional and personal beliefs. Her experience illustrates the consequences that untreated trauma has on individuals and society at large, including mental health problems, addiction, homelessness, and incarceration. Her story evokes anger, frustration, sadness, and despair, and it often triggers past traumas. It motivates, it empowers, and it restores faith in humanity, and it reminds us of the tremendous impact one individual can have on the life of another. So I will stop there and just let her introduce herself a little bit, and maybe if you can start, we're going to talk about trauma, and we're going to talk about the impact, that when we as moms have trauma and have gone through traumatic experiences, we can pass that on to our children, and we want to make sure we don't do that. So maybe, Ms. Cain, if you can start out with a quick intro and just telling us what is trauma.
Okay, absolutely. So trauma is defined as the experience of violence or victimization, which includes sexual abuse, severe neglect, loss, domestic violence, or witnessing of violence, terrorism, or a disaster. So it's pretty much any kind of interpersonal experience that someone actually receives or sees. It's not limited to that, of course. It's also the psychological distressing event that is outside the range of normal human experiences, as Perry has told us in 2002. So one of the things we're talking about is these things that should not happen to a person, but because when you live in such a generational cycle of abuse, you don't know that these things should not happen to you. So a lot of times what we do is just try to make sure people understand that this shouldn't happen and it could prevent you from living a healthy lifestyle. It's also the unusual severe stressor or event that causes or is capable of causing death, injury, or threat to someone's physical self. We talk about the violence in communities and watching losing loved ones because of community violence. And you're talking about police brutality, this is an unusual, severe stressor that happens in the community and families that should not be happening. Trauma is also usually the feeling of horror, terror, or helplessness, severely threatening the health or survival of an individual. It renders a person powerless in the face of overwhelming fear. It overwhelms the person's capability to cope at times, and it certainly violates the basic safety of an environment and the trust of others. So that's how we really define trauma and try to help people to understand. If we did have to give it a definition, that is the definition that the National Center for Trauma-Informed Care, when I was the team leader, we all came together and thought that would kind of cover it all.
Right. Yeah, that's deep, and there are a lot of layers because it sounds like you could have personally experienced the trauma or you could have witnessed someone else experiencing it, or it can even be something in broader society that's happening. So it's hard to imagine with that definition that any of us haven't experienced some form of trauma. So how do you know when it's trauma versus just day-to-day stress? Because I think we're all going to be stressed by, the things that we see happening to other people, things that happen to us. Everybody has a story, but what are the signs that you're actually experiencing trauma and it's forming within you versus just a normal level of concern and stress?
Well, and that's the thing. So what we talk about is that we should just use universal precaution. It is so much trauma that goes on in everyday lives now, and we live in under a whole different scope of the way we deal with things. We really are. So, and there's so much happening in every direction, whether it be having the broken systems that we have to deal with, the government, or just community, the community violence. So we just say use universal precaution, because this is the thing. When we talk about trauma, we also talk about how people can begin to heal from trauma. So we said that, we train people on being trauma-informed. And if you're trauma-informed, you just pretty much assume that you use the universal precaution and just assume that everybody has been traumatized one way or another. You can't even turn on the television and not be traumatized, the news. So with that, because if you're treating someone as if they have trauma, you're not doing anything wrong, because trauma-informed care is the heart's work. It's the mindset. It is treating people the right way. It is looking at possibly what happened to an individual instead of what's wrong with that individual. So, and I think that it's very obvious in our systems of care when somebody's been traumatized. For me, example, why would a 9-year-old start drinking? You know what I mean? That's just, 9-year-olds just don't start drinking for no reason. So I was drinking because that's when my sexual abuse started. You know what I mean? And why would somebody like me continue to have babies and lose them? As a result of rape and prostitution, I was, conceiving my children, and they were being snatched. It's not natural for someone to not care and take care of their babies. What has happened to prevent that? So we look at people not making healthy choices, not being able to move on in life, just kind of being stuck,
Right.
and even being diagnosed with mental illness. A lot of times they kept diagnosing me with schizophrenic, bipolar, borderline, borderline this, borderline that. And no, I was just experiencing trauma.
Right, it's not you, it's what happened to you, right.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So that's how you can really look at the self-destruction or how people go out and become predators in a way.
That is so deep. Yeah, when I read that part of your bio that somebody finally asked what happened to you instead of what's wrong with you, like I literally got chills, because that is huge, like understanding a person's experience and what they've been through. So I'd like you to talk about that a little more. Like you gave us a few examples, but if you don't mind just kind of sharing your journey and telling us a little bit, about your life journey and what led to you being diagnosed with trauma, and then talk a little bit about your healing journey as well.
Absolutely. So I grew up like a lot of us grew up, in the project where I came from, in the homes, in a single mother home. My mother was an alcoholic. For whatever her unidentified, untreated trauma was, she was unable to take care of us and be nurturing and loving and protected the way that we believe mothers should be. So by me being the oldest, I'm the oldest of 10. She would sometimes just leave us in the household for 2 days at a time, go drink or whatever. And so I would just be the one home with my sisters and brothers, just trying to be that parent at around age 9. But because there was always these community parties, these parties with these community men, what I realized was that doing these, after those last night's party, they would have these half-filled cups just sitting around. And I started to drink these half-filled cups, and what I realized was when I drank these half-filled cups, when my mother smacked me down and called me names, it really didn't feel as bad anymore. And when the men came that night, it didn't feel as shameful, as painful. So I actually used to just sneak and find the alcohol when I first experienced that feeling of that numbing feeling from it. So from that, at around age 11, I experienced that for a few years, and then we were taken away from my mother, put into foster care. And as we know, the foster care system is supposed to set up to work for the children, but it really works against the children, because the way that they snatch and play, it is the most inhuman thing that you can do to a child, because there's nothing put into place for children to really understand this. There's no debriefing. There's no therapy. There's nothing. They're snatched in place, and they lead us to believe that this is the best thing for us, but in our hearts, in our mind, in our spirit, it is the worst thing for us because you took us from the only thing that we're familiar. And so and then the next day they send us to school like nothing ever happened. So now you're hearing these reports like she's unable to keep up in class. She can't focus. We think she has some learning disability. No, you just turned my world upside down. So I went from that system given to a cousin who, did the best she could, and I've been severely traumatized by that, but she did the best she could, only for my mother to come back 3 years later and ask me to come back and live with her around age 14. And she had 3 more kids by then, and she told me she loved me, of course, because children love unconditionally. I wanted to be with my mother. I love my mother. I would never stop loving my mother. It's simple as that. So I ran upstairs, I packed my things, and I went with my mother, only to find out after she beat me in the street that she didn't want me back because she loved me. She probably just needed a babysitter. So I attempted a suicide. I took a whole bottle of pills because I remember somewhere in my life somebody said if you take a bottle of pills, you'll die. And I had preferred to die at that point. But I woke up in emergency room, them trying to stick the tube down my throat to get the charcoal in my stomach. I could see them talking to my mother, who convinced them that I took an accidental overdose. They never asked me why, not once. So I was released back to her, living with my aunt. I was an alcoholic by 15. My mother signed my marriage license. I to marry an older man who thought I was cute. She became his drinking friend. And
I was 16?
I was 16. And she was 8 years older than me, and I moved in. My mother moved in with my 3 little sisters, and I was thinking maybe this older man can protect me from all the other bad men of the world. You know what I mean? But he ended up being even a worse nightmare because he would just beat me down sometimes in the street until he seen blood. And I was unable to go finish school. I was unable to work or anything. And as a punishment, he took my 2-year-old son away from me and sent him out of state for me not to see him again. And then he left me with no home, no money, nothing. And I ended up in the street for 19 years. Not only did I end up homeless for 19 years, I was going to 2-hour systems of care that was re-traumatizing me. My first drug program, the drug counselor raped me. And every time I would go back and forth into the detention center, they would give me all this medication, tell me I had all these diagnoses, where I was sexually abused by the officers, where they gave me medicine and made me miscarried, and they shackled me down to the gurney with my deceased baby stuck between my legs for hours. I can go on and tell you all the horrific trauma I suffered by the hands of the people that were supposed to take care of me and get me better, but they only took me further away from the possibility of healing or recovery. So in 2004, I'm in prison, my 83rd arrest. I'm in prison. I'm pregnant again. Now, mind you, as a result of the 19 years being in the street, I was a prostitute for 19 years because you don't live in the streets homeless for 19 years and not find a way to survive. It's simple as that. So my survival was prostitution. And as a result of prostitution, I never knew if my children, 3 of my children were conceived by prostitution or raped, because almost daily I was prostituting or I was being raped. So I never knew how they were really being conceived. But they were mine. They were mine. And quickly, not long after I would give birth to them, of course, they would rightfully so take them from me, because they said there was no hope for Tonier Cain. So I ended up in prison 2004, pregnant again, and terrified because I got used to the rapes and the beatings. I got to the point where you didn't even have to pull your gun out, put it to my head anymore. Just come on, just hurry up, do it. You ain't even got to punch me in my mouth anymore. I'm not even going to talk smack to you anymore. Just do it. I got used to the rapes and the beatings. But what I could not get used to is somebody taking my child out of my hand, turning their back and walk away. So here I am in prison again, and I'm pregnant.
And how many children did you have at that point?
So I had 4 living children. My ex-husband had taken my oldest, and then I had 3 that had been adopted out. So here I am pregnant with my 5th living child. And because I had, of course, I had 1 abortion and 1 miscarriage. And so here I am with my 5th child, my daughter. And I lay on that concrete floor in that prison cell. I don't even call it a prayer, but it was an ear cry of desperation. I was like, God, I don't know if you listen to people like me, but if you do, please help me. And, and I found out about this program. They said that helped me with my trauma. Again, didn't really know what trauma was, but I had everything else. I figured I had that. I really thought trauma is when you get hit by a car when you come back from war. That's what I want trauma. But they were telling me that trauma was being sexually abused as a child, adolescent, even as an adult. They also told me that the domestic violence, the neglect and abandonment by my mother, they were telling me all these things were not supposed to happen to me, and it could prevent me from living a healthy life and making healthy decisions. And they told me that they were going to help me with my addiction, my mental health. The only reason I wanted to go through this program, because by then I had 20-some other failed treatments. And finally, I go to the only reason why I wanted to go because they said I get to keep my baby with me. And truthfully, ladies, I just was thinking if only I can hold on to this one for more than 3 hours this time. Please, if I could just hold this one, if I could put this one heartbeat against mine for just a little longer, things may be different. So I ended up going to this program. And I remember my therapist telling me everything that happened to you as a child happened to you. You didn't do to yourself, Tonier. And we started with all the trauma that impacted my life and my neglect, abandonment, the sexual abuse, the physical abuse, all the emotional abuse and things like that. And I had to go through a grievance process for my 4 kids. Only then was I able to change that belief system that I developed at a very young age, that I am nothing till I am somebody and I can be anything I want in this world. See, because when my belief system changed, my thought process changed, and I started to make the best decision. And the only difference between me today and me 13 years ago when I got out of prison is I still have to cope. I still remember my trauma. I have not forgotten anything, but I have healthier tools to help me to self-soothe and self-regulate. That's it. Smoking crack cocaine for 19 years was a good tool at the time because it was the one tool that stopped me from blowing my brains out. It kept me alive for me to get well. But, of course, it kept me in trouble. It took my children away from me and all of that. So I just had to replace those tools with healthier tools so I can live a healthier lifestyle and raise my daughter like I was naturally supposed to. So I ended up going through a 1-year course called Circle of Security. Do you know?
What was it called?
Circle of Security, to help me to form a secure attachment with my child. Do you know I've never heard those words together until I was last pregnant? Secure attachment? Never. I didn't know what secure. I never even heard that before because they were giving me those traditional parenting classes. You know, the ones that show you how to properly diaper a baby. I've been diapering my sisters and brothers since I was 3 years old. I knew how to hold the baby head up and hold my little sister probably since I was able to walk. I needed to know how to be loving and nurturing and protective of my daughter because my learned experience was from my mother. And I needed to be unlearned so I can learn how to have a secure attachment with my daughter. And
so can you just go back a little bit? I want to know, like, was the program that you found on trauma, was that the turning point for you? And was there any particular individual who was particularly helpful? Because you mentioned a lot of people in the past who were in those kind of roles and who were supposed to be helpful but ended up being more harmful than helpful. So was it this program, or was it there one person who kind of changed things for you?
Well, I think it was a combination of things. So this one program was a pilot program for trauma, trauma-informed care. So it was the one program that I went to that I didn't feel like I was judged. I feel like I was believed. I feel like I was heard. And they helped me to tap into my strength. So often we have these traditional programs where they break you down and build you back up. Why? It don't make sense. We've been breaking people down. All of our lives we've been broken down. I need somebody to show me how to build, to tap into my strength. All of my life, every time I would go to a program or any kind of institution, they would always tell me my weaknesses. They never told me my strength. It was only when I was able to tap into my strength that I was able to understand what my tools were to help me to make better decisions to live a healthier life. So this program, I don't think...
Can you tell us about some of those tools? Because you mentioned tools a few times. What are some of the tools you learned that you still use today?
Okay, absolutely. Well, everybody's trauma is different. Everybody's tools, early warning signs, and the way that they self-soothe is different. But for me, my tool was me developing my faith. That's my number one tool. I read the Word of God a lot. I mean, a lot, and I try to live by the Word of God as best I can. But also, I'm it's funny because I am into that wellness thing. It's a huge tool for me. And once I realized that I did survive, I am a survivor, I wanted to do even more for me. I wanted that mental, I wanted that physical, that spiritual, physical, and financial healing. You know what I mean? I wanted that wellness. So I started to work towards that. So one of the things I do is I exercise a lot. I like to lift weights. That is one of my best tools because I have one daughter that has not come back into my life yet. I have all my other kids. So when I start to go into that, into that dark place of feeling, just crying and lonely without her, I will go and I lift weights and run on a treadmill. People don't even realize I'm crying because they think I'm sweating. So it's become a great tool. Also, being a mother. Being a mother it's been amazing. To hear this little girl call me mom, and to watch her to be grow into this amazing young lady, it's just. And I'm a part of that. It's just amazing. So I think those are my number one tools, and I have other tools too. You know what I mean? I'm a reader. Right. I read up things like that, and my work is a tool for me.
Right. No, that's wonderful. And I always say that the foundations of a healthy life are spiritual health and physical health. And those are the first two things you mentioned. Whatever that is for you, you have to figure out how to get those things in order. Then you can build everything else on that. You have to have a solid foundation. You're reminding me I need to work on them. So thank you. Can you tell us, though, so you talked about being a mom and how important that is to you. How did your trauma affect your role as a mom? Did you see it seeping in at times, or how have you managed not passing on that trauma to your children?
Oh, my goodness. It has been a journey. I mean, so one of the things that we called it, in circle security, they would call it shock music. Because, remember the Jaws movie where the dun, 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 that something's going to happen. That when you hear that music, he's ready to tear somebody apart. You know that. So we talked about how we have this shock music when our trauma starts to impact how we are mothered. I'll give you a prime example. So when I had my daughter, when I found out I wasn't HIV positive, I could not. First of all, I didn't believe it. Because the things I've done, and I really believed I was, but I wasn't. I was negative. I wanted to breastfeed my daughter. Something I have never seen it done. My mother didn't do it. I didn't see anybody ever do it. But I wanted to experience that, so I breastfed my daughter, and oh my goodness, the bonding was so unbelievable that I would not supplement. I wouldn't give her anything else. So around 15 months. They kept saying, Tony, in the program, because by then I was going after aftercare, they were saying, Tony, you have to supplement because if you don't, if something happened to you, how will we be able to feed her? But I wouldn't do that because growing up, I was hungry all the time. And what I knew was at this point, if my daughter was to take something else, she would have to allow herself to be hungry for a period of time before she takes something else other than my breast milk. And I said, I'll never allow my daughter to be hungry, ever, ever, ever. So guess what? Something happened to me. I was crossing the street in Baltimore City, and the SUV hit me crossing the street. I ended up in Johns Hopkins ICU unit when my daughter was 15 months old, unable to continue to nurse her, unable to take care of her, you know what I mean, broken up from head to toe. And so what I did was I was basing her wellness on my trauma because I should have been supplementing at that point because you just have to. At 15 months, you start to introduce her to other foods. But I didn't do it because I was making the decision based on something that happened to me. Like now, when I hear about a predator, a sexual abuser loose somewhere in California, here I am in Maryland. It feels like the person is my next door neighbor. I would go into this frenzy, about my daughter, and you know what I mean, just go and just go over and over again, but safety, safety, safety. And she's looking at me, and I'm almost in a, so I've learned how to calm down and think. I have to think. And when I say think, I don't mean for a second. Before I make a huge decision for my daughter, I have to really, I just wrote my new book coming out called Relationships After Trauma. It talks about motherhood after being traumatized. And I have to really think. Not only do I think, I tap into my network. You know what I mean? I tap into the people that I know that has been through this or have done this, and we have a discussion before I make that decision. And you have to, you know what I mean, because it can impact our children in a unhealthy way.
Right. Wow. So tell us more about your work now. You mentioned the book Relationships After Trauma. Tell us more about what you're doing in terms of your current role working in mental health and with informed trauma care.
Yes. So I got on the program, and a few years later, I started to, because of the film About My Life Healing Me, I was traveled with the film a little bit, and it just blew up. It just went. It's the number one film that all system of care use to train on trauma. So they actually SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, which is our government, they funded a center called the National Center for Trauma-Informed Care in 2008, and they wrote me in to be their team leader. Now, mind you, I was their team leader, and I had no letters behind my name. I had no higher education, but they believed in my experience, and I led the team who had letters behind their name, and I led their team into coming to develop all the information, most of the information you see on the SAMHSA website around trauma and trauma-informed care. I worked there for 5 years, and then I resigned because I started my own nonprofit, to provide trauma-informed care services, training, education, awareness around trauma-informed care to help break community, help communities become healthier and break the cycle of community violence and all of that. So we do a lot of work with individuals, family, and community. And I'm also a filmmaker. The new film I have that I'm the executive producer of that's ready to come out is called Walking Through Bullets. It's a gang-related film. It talks about how kids acting into the gangs. We use some real gang members in the film. So I do everything that I do. I have a new book. I'm a radio show talk host. And today, after I get off the call, we'll start filming our upcoming television show where it shows me and my husband as life coaches for people coming. My husband works with people in the community, young men that's trying to transition from gang members to productive members of society, as well as drug dealers to productive members of society. And I work with traumatized individuals, substance abuse, mental health, and incarceration, helping them to transition in a healthy way in the community. So we actually start filming. This is our first day of filming later today. So everything I do taps into helping people live healthier lives. Because 13 years ago, with 83 arrests, 66 convictions, 19 years of prostitution, crack addiction, mental health, homelessness, they told me I would never amount to anything. Today, I have days named after me by governors and mayors throughout the country. I have worked in every single state in our country, including Alaska and Hawaii. I also do an international conference every year where I bring people, providers, to train to get more awareness around trauma. This year we have it in Detroit. And people from all over come to my conference. So everything I do, is nothing that I don't do that directly impacts change in individuals, communities, and systems of care.
That's deep. That's wonderful. So I want to ask.
And I give the glory to God. I gotta give the glory to God. It's not me.
Amen. Amen. But congratulations you for answering the call, because everyone doesn't. You could have been defeated by it or just kept it to yourself, but you chose to share your experience and the knowledge and tools you acquired with the community and world at large. So that's commendable. And just listening to you, I'm thinking about all the ways that we experience trauma. One is through things that have happened to us personally. I'm sure many of the women on the call may have experienced some of the same things that you have, whether they want to talk about it or not. But we also Or, I think about all the trauma that's passed down from generations historically. I went to a play this week that was about a woman named, I think, Mary Turner, who was pregnant, like very pregnant, and lynched in 1918 in Georgia. They lynched her, hung her, and then shot her hundreds of times and set her on fire. So if she didn't die one way, she was going to die another. But before that, she was, almost due to deliver the baby. They cut the baby out of her stomach, and then somebody in the crowd stomped on the baby's head to make sure the baby died too. So just think about that. This is 1918. I'm from Georgia. My grandmother was alive in Georgia at that time, my great-grandmother. So think about, like, what our ancestors have seen and the psychological trauma that's been passed down from generations just based on the history of this country. Then you layer that on with things that have happened to us personally, and then you layer it on with things that are still happening today. So the way this group came together is that we've all been traumatized, very concerned as moms of Black sons with what we see happening in terms of police brutality, and our sons constantly being targeted and assumed to be, negative forces in society. And when you were initially talking about the definition of trauma, like what I felt when I started this group was helplessness. You talked about helplessness. Like after seeing the cases of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile, following so many other cases, I just felt paralyzed and helpless. And I felt like I had to do something. A lot of people responded to that feeling because we feel the same anxiety and fear. So there's so many layers to the trauma that we experience. It's personal, it's societal, it's historical. So I wanted to just ask you, with any of that, to elaborate on that, particularly on the police brutality issue that we're dealing with. Do you have any information on that and how that can affect, moms of Black sons in particular, and what we can try to do to heal from that as we continue to see these things happening in society?
Absolutely. Like you said, because one that I think about, the part of the definition is seriously threatening the health and the survival of the individual. Just knowing that every single day that our son could be in a situation as the young men that you just talked about, or even, my Sandra, and you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so it's every single day, when my husband, just all of us, when my husband goes to work 3 o'clock in the morning, we live in a pretty upscale area of a city, you know what I mean, where it's very nice. It's not, you know what I mean? And for him to drive through this city to get to Baltimore City, where his office is, it's terrifying just to even think. So, you know what I mean? I just think that, we all is validated, of course. This is not our imagination. This is, this is something that's happening, and we cannot depend on the administration. We cannot depend on the government to make this change. This change has to come from the community. And I think that, you founding this organization, Moms of Black Boys, is just a great start, because not only are we have to educate our young men, our young boys, our husbands, our brothers, we have to get the community involved, because it is there's a saying that it takes a community to raise a child. It takes a community to heal a trauma survivor, to work with trauma. We all, like you say, we all have generational trauma. We do. It just passed down in our DNA. It is. I always tell people, when you're treating somebody in your facility, you're not just treating them, you're treating their great-great-great-grandmother. You know what I mean? That's who you're treating. So it's generational stuff. So it's not surface. It's not surface. Right. So I just think that, it's one of those things where you have to have these organizations that just won't back down, that just say, we're going to stand up for what is right, and we're going to fight for what is right. You know what I mean? And every, organization have their own way of doing it. I really believe that, until we continue to lift our voices and come together and make the changes from the community so they can see this is not plain, because what we need to do is help our boys to understand we have to stop our own violence. You know what I mean? We gotta stick around. We gotta stay around, and we gotta show them that we care about one another. You know what I mean? And and I think that that's important, because our voices were raised louder, and this is one of those things where it's going to take communities and God. Don't get in God, because you're going up against a very you're going up against a brick wall at times.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Well, we're going to open it up for Q&A soon. I just wanted to ask as a final question is this session is, what are some of the ways that moms can avoid inflicting secondary trauma on our children?
Yeah. I just think that we just have to, at first you got to really just come to terms with some things that may have happened to you. You know, you can't, it's one of those things that have to be identified, addressed, and necessarily treated. You know what I mean? However you want to treat it, whether you want to go to your pastor, whether you want to, because I know when I was being raised, we didn't believe in therapy. You know, it's just like, you never hear about therapy, the outreach center. You know what I mean? I know therapy has helped me. I know it has helped me. And whatever that treatment for you may be. But until you identify, address your own trauma, there's no way you can avoid inflicting it or, you know, or allowing it to impact our children, our community, our work, everything, our marriage, our relationships. It will impact, because the way the trauma present itself, you can, I know I have people that say, well, you know, I didn't become a prostitute, I didn't do drugs, but this person, I said, well, yeah, but you keep sleeping with every man come across your door. You're looking for everything outside, and it's become very destructive to the point where now you have this, you know, all this stuff going on with you relationship-wise, and you know, and it shouldn't be. And I have this, like, I have a, you know, a friend that she will, whatever, she cannot be responsible for the, you know, she makes good money, but as soon as she get it, she goes shopping. It's like it's her numbing. It's what she does, and it prevents problems in her household. So it always comes out in a destructive way if we don't deal with it. But I think the first step is to admit that we have been traumatized and that we may need some help.
Thank you. You know, you mentioned a number of signs throughout the way, like your friend, you wouldn't think of that as excessive shopping as a sign of trauma. You talked about drinking, drugs, sexual behavior. All of those things can be signs. Okay, well, thank you so much. This has been very, very deep and informative, and we truly appreciate you sharing your story and your experiences. And I just want to open it up to the group for questions. So if you have a question, please *6 to unmute yourself and ask Tonier directly.
Hello. Good morning.
Good morning,
Mary. Good morning. I'm from New Jersey. How are you? My question is, I guess my question is for the mob group itself, as far as the legislative issues in the state of New Jersey. I'm currently working with two legislative bills and senators in the state of New Jersey. So I just wanted to know how I can get mob involved in those bills.
Hi, this is Alicia from Policy. Email, I would say get in contact. Email me, policy@Mob United, and we can talk offline. We're actually looking for people who are in New Jersey, mobs who are in New Jersey, who can help us to get connected, and we can also train you. Many of us on the policy committee, this is what we do for a living. We do advocacy, we do legal work, so we're happy to work with you offline.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, hi, this is Tammy. I'm from New York. I was moved by your testimony because, a lot of times we don't want to look at our past and we don't think it affects who we are today, and I think that's part of the issue. I, for one, know that, I've gone through some of the trauma that you spoke about, not probably as severely but it took years to just get a footing where I could, be okay. I was molested when I was a child in my grandmother's home by a relative. And a lot of people ask me why I stay home, and it's for that very reason. I don't want anybody watching my kids.
Yeah.
And even though my daughter is 16 years old now, I am determined to stay until she graduates home, no matter how traumatic or how, financially strapping it is for me, just to stay home as much as possible. So when she comes home at 3 o'clock, I'm here with her. And I get it. I breastfed because I wanted that connection to my kids. And not that my mom didn't do a great job, but she had her own trauma, and she still dealt with it. And, and I tell my kids today, I guess this is my testimony, people will hurt you and they will screw you and they won't help you clean it up.
That's right.
And you have to learn how to clean up your own stuff, even other people that dumped in your backyard. You have to clean it up. And everyone has a different way, but I listened to your testimony. I'm speechless, and I'm also moved because I'm an advocate, not just for our boys, but also in public schools. And I think these kids come to these schools with a lot of crap in their minds and their hearts. And for me, school was a refuge from home when my mother was in a domestic violence relationship. So what we need now is to, as moms of black boys, and to bring this back to, the communities, is to integrate this into the school systems to make people a little bit more sensitive. And how do we do that? How do we train teachers who are not trained, or staff members, or, or administrators who are not trained to deal with our trauma, to actually have a little bit more compassion and to ask the right questions? And I think that when you said no one ever asked you why, that, I was just like, that is the absolute truth. No one ever asks you why. They ask you, what's your problem?
You're right.
And, how do we get to the why? Especially in schools with our black boys, because they are dropping out like flies and they are becoming discouraged, and then they look to alternatives to school, and they become angry and they have conflict with the police, and it's just an ongoing fight.
Yeah, it is. And I'm actually working with the Department of Education, and I've worked with, it's amazing because now schools are calling my office. We need Tonier to come out and train us, and so I'm going somewhere, and I think my assistant is on this call as well. So I think I'm going to Wayne, New York for a school, to do something for a school next month. And I've been in a lot. I'm working, and I'm telling you, it has been difficult, but now people see, okay, we need to get this in the schools. And even working on, trying to had the conversation on Capitol Hill with Department of Ed, and now trickling down in the different states. So I'm out there, and we're training. We bring the awareness, and we're training. One of the things I always say, if we have to start with community events, like I was just asked to come to a whole county of schools, and I said I'll do it, but I want to do a community event because it doesn't make sense to train the teachers, the school staff, have time with the students, and the parents are not there. I want to have it. So I always, because I'm one of those things, I want the whole thing. It makes sense. You can't do one without the other. So, yeah, we definitely are training more schools there on that. I have more schools on my schedule this year than I have ever had.
Please let us know when you come to New York. I know I can speak for myself, and I know DePelsha feels the same way because we're kindred spirits.
Absolutely.
We really would like to meet with you because, we do work with, Mob United does work with the DOE. We have a relationship with the Eagle Academy, which is an all-boys public school here on Staten Island and in New York, all throughout the 5 boroughs and New Jersey. But we know firsthand, and DePelsha and I talk about this all the time, right now we have the ear of the chancellor. And this is something that we definitely want to make sure that this message is getting out there. As a matter of fact, on Staten Island, and I was telling this to DePelsha, we just got a grant for $1 million grant from the Carnegie Foundation, and they are actually working on how to deal with racial inequities in the school system on Staten Island. So this is definitely, hopefully, this is a pilot that will be implemented throughout the 5 boroughs and hopefully nationwide. But, I'm getting a little emotional about this because, we care about our boys so much.
Yeah.
And our children, not because I have a daughter too, and we're at a loss. And I know it's like beating our head, but I think this is definitely the piece that needs to be put into the puzzle. We have to
absolutely
and talk about that trauma and also get the parents to talk about it as well.
Yep, I agree. It changed my life. It changed my daughter's life. You know what I mean? It's just it's healing. It's true healing.
Okay, do we have other questions? Please unmute yourself. Anyone else? Here's your chance.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Go ahead. Are you there?
You were married. You mentioned that you were married, you had a husband, and as this is happening, and are faced with
I'm sorry, you're breaking up a little.
You're breaking up. Can you put your question in chat and I'll read it for you? Are you able to do that?
Hi, is this better?
Yes, that's better.
My question is in terms of, you mentioned that you were married, and as black men, oftentimes they face their own battles of dealing with their own personal trauma as well as what they see on the news and with society, basically putting a target on them. How do you manage not transferring your trauma or basically being sensitive to the trauma of black men and that they're faced? How do you separate those two, and how do you use what you've learned as an overcomer to help your husband in dealing with the trauma that he's facing as a black man?
Absolutely. And that's a really good question because my husband was, once upon a time, they took him off the step to age 13 to make him this huge, big drug dealer. He ended up being a huge drug dealer and getting caught up in that. He ended up being wrongfully convicted of murder and ended up getting a life plus 20-year sentence. And so he, of course, he has been through a lot of the being out there in the streets, a lot of the police brutality, the beat downs, and the drags, and then all the incarceration, including getting a life, life plus 20. They just said the whole group, they didn't care who did it or who didn't do it. They gave everybody life plus 20. So my husband, who, of course, God has changed his life. He's healing. He actually create curriculum to help drug dealers and gang members to become productive members of society, and now he employs them. So we're kind of like this husband and wife team where we have to be sensitive to each other. And I can tell you, it's still hard because I'm a victim of sexual abuse. There's times where I can't even have my husband in the same room with me or allow him to touch me. And he understands that, and I understand how it is for him to feel and to be rejected or to feel like, okay, I'll never achieve anything because everything is being pushed against me because of just being out there in the world. He's a black man in this world with a history, okay? Not just a black man in the world, but with our history. And so we just support each other. Our marriage is founded on the rock of Jesus Christ. We try to live by the word of God. But there are times, man, we got to talk about it. We go through it. And at the end of the day, what we realize is that we both have survived some traumatic experiences in our life, and we have to have each other's back. We have to. So I continue to go through classes, anything at my church offer around marriage, you know what I mean, anything that I can, people that I put in my life that actually have, you know, successful in marriage, whatever that is. And I just reach out to a lot of people. I ask a lot of questions, and I just have a lot of people we have a lot of people to surround us that are a network of support, and we support each other because a lot of things come up in this marriage. we only been married for 2 years, so I'm still praying. But it works. It works, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, we believe that we are together to glorify God first and to help others, and that's what we based it on.
Wow. Does anyone have a final question before we wrap up? Okay. Well, I just want to thank you again so much for joining us. This has been amazing, insightful. I am in awe of you. You're a survivor, and I'm so glad that you decided to share your story and your lessons with others. That takes a lot of courage, given all that you've been through. And I just, pray that God will continue to bless you in your journey. So thank you so much. Is there anything you want to say in closing?
If anybody want to get in touch with me, please let's give them Lisa's contact information or my contact information. Okay. You have both. And I look forward to all of us changing this world because it is in need of changing. So I look whatever we do in our own way, man, I just pray that we break these generational cycles because at the end of the day, we will be left standing. I believe that with all of my heart. And that's what I work towards.
Yes, thank you so much. And on that note, thank you for joining us and taking the time. And on that note, I think it's appropriate for us to close out in prayer. So, Chris, if you're with us, I also realized we didn't read the quote. So if you want to read the quote and close in prayer, that's fine.
Hi, can you hear me, Depelsha?
Yes, we hear you.
I'll start off with the quote. If you don't let it out, the grief becomes a scream trapped inside your soul, a constant cry in the dark, a sob you can never release. So scream, shout, cry the way the sky does with thunder and lightning and rain. For it knows it is being cleansed. It knows its storm is the only way to release the pain. Nikita Gill. Father God, we thank you for another day and another opportunity. We thank you for the wisdom that our guest speaker has shown today, and we ask that we all remember that it's okay to release and to let it out, and to scream that it's a part of your process of cleansing us inside. We ask you to go with us through our homes. We ask you to continue to look after all of our young black men and our black boys. We ask you to protect our boys that are in the correctional system, go into all the prisons, all the juvenile systems, Lord. We ask you to continue to strengthen us as an organization so that we can do our mission, protect our boys, and we can hold our legislators accountable. Lord, we thank you for all the moms that continue to be a beacon of light during the Martin Luther King celebrations and to continue to know that the dream is still possible and it lives in each of us as moms. Lord, I want to thank you for all the moms that are down in Miami. Please go with Vanessa and all the other moms that are remembering the life, the dreams, the goals, and the possibilities that were available to Trayvon. Bless his parents, bless his mom and his dad, his brother, bless the Miami community, Lord. And I ask you to go and bless all the sons on this phone that are represented, the ones that are not on the phone. And, Lord, I want to thank you for your strength, guidance, and forgive us anything that's not of you, Lord, and take it away from us. I ask these things in Jesus' name, and we pray. And thank you, moms, for another Saturday with Mob United. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. And I forgot to mention something that Chris mentioned. Vanessa McCullers is in Miami right now, participating in a rally in memory of Trayvon Martin with his mom and other mothers of the movement. And I'm heading to Miami later today because there's a Trayvon Martin Foundation dinner tomorrow. We were actually invited to join by Gwen Carr, Eric Garner's mother, and we'll be sitting with her. So pray for us in that as well, in memory of Trayvon. And our next call will be in a month on March 10th. Thank you so much for joining, and have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend, Moms.